जीवन भर अविचल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है। सज धज कर आवे आकर्षण, पग पग पर झूमते प्रलोभन, होकर सबसे विमुख वटोही, पथ पर संभल संभल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है। दिव्य ध्येय की ओर तपस्वी, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है। अमर तत्व की अमिट साधना, प्राणों में उत्सर्ग कामना, जीवन का शाश्वत व्रत लेकर साधक हंस तन कण गलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है। दिव्य ध्येय की ओर तपस्वी, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है, जीवन भर अविचल चलता है।
Shall we start?
Yes, Maharaj. Today the attendance is a bit poor because I think they are yet to join. Some of them normally who join. But anyway, we will continue.
Election fever has gripped them.
We will start, Maharaj. We will not.
Okay.
Didi is here. He conveys. Yeah, namaskar.
1 equal to 100 audience.
Yeah.
Namaskaram to all of you. I welcome you all to the Love India platform, enriching your time by spending it in the thought of our beloved idol and ideal Swami Vivekananda. Like in ancient times, our rishis have discovered a few mantras which, when meditated upon and worked out, can open the doors to our goal. Love India is one of that mantra which Swami Vivekananda had paraphrased for one of his disciples. And it applies to all of us, especially those who are interested in both the development of individual as well as the national development. For individuals make a nation, so the character of one man reflects the character of the whole nation. And we see in the splendorous personality of Swamiji how this character of India reflected itself, especially when he was in other countries and people were wonderstruck at the grace and the benevolence with which this monk moved among those Western people. In the last few meets, we were viewing about one aspect of the splendorous personality of Swamiji and how he glows in his relationship with people who were stranger to him, yet who helped him when he was an unknown monk. And we also saw how he responded to them after he became the world-famous cyclonic monk of India. Swamiji's response is a classic expression of gratitude mixed with unqualified feelings of thankfulness and gratefulness to them and he's remembering and dealing with them in the same way as he was before he became famous speaks volume about his ability to be with the poor and the common folks of India. We find in India, many of them, even those who belong to lower caste, once they become rich or get into power and position, they don't even look upon the very caste from which they rose as something worth respecting. They feel they are a better folk than the caste from which they came. Once when I was in Koilandi, I used to visit the fishermen colony and then used to help those poor students with educational kits and other things. Once I was to open a famous Malayalam newspaper called Madhuram Malayalam. While inaugurating that newspaper, one of the local men who had gone to Dubai and had become rich, he was the chief guest of that day. While talking, he told that he had shifted his residence from the fisherman colony to some other colony. And on asking why he had shifted, he told these people do not know how to be cultured. I was really shocked and I had to reply to him telling that Swami Vivekananda never forgot the gratitude for the help which he got from the caste from where he rose to this position. Having come up to that position, it is easy to kick the very platform from where we rose. But the real greatness of the man lies in remembering the very platform which formed the base for his development. Then I told him that you rose at the cost of the fishermen to which caste you belong. But after becoming successful, you have just kicked off the springboard. Now you go back to your fisherman colony and help others also to rise to that level of development to which you have reached. That is a sign of a magnanimous heart. The man was really shaken, and for a few moments he was left stunned, and he told Swamiji, I never thought in this way. I told you are supposed to think in this way because people talk ill of the other caste which are lower to them. But you were once upon being treated as a lower caste and you belong to them. So it is your duty that having eaten their salt, having raised in those colonies, that you go back and work out for the welfare and development of those people. And this was remarkable in the case of Swamiji, that even after he became an eminent man, he never lost a sight of the ground from where he rose. A lotus, however big and however blooming it is, must always remember the ground from where it rose and bloomed as one of the most captivating lotus. Swami Vivekananda is such a beautiful lotus of India that he was so deeply rooted both in the past and was also proud of India's future. So that's why in discussing some of the life incidents of this great man, we feel inspired. And how to imitate a great man, you get a clue by reading these incidents. Today we are focusing on another aspect of Swamiji's response to one of the most important aspects of our lives, whom we in India hold in high esteem and honor, and to whom a true Indian always has an eternal gratitude and warmth and adoration. One of the most beautiful aspects of our creation, the woman, Nari, Stri. Woman occupies an incomparable position in Indian ethos and in fact is considered as God himself or next only to God alone. For every being in this world is created by her, the mother, the feminine aspect of God and creation, worshipped in Bharata Varsha as Shakti, the energy. I am suddenly made to remember one of the mischief that happens during our college days. When we were in college days, many times the boys will write some phrases, some idioms and some slogans on the bench in which they are sitting. Sometimes they will be humorous, sometimes they will be very bad, sometimes they will be funny, but sometimes they are very sublime also. And fortunately, I got to a bench where I read this sublime writing on my bench with a pin, and it was in 1975 or something, and still I'm remembering. It was written that after creating, God came to the earth and found that there was nobody like him. Therefore, he created mother. It was a beautiful, very touching thought current, which I read on my bench when I was almost 18 or 19, but it has left an indelible impression on my mind. God created this world and found that nobody was like him in this creation. Therefore, he created mothers. So great is the reverence for women as mother that even an all-renouncing monk bows down and touches the feet of mother as the most sacred thing in this world. But he does not do this to his father. He just folds his hands and offers his salutation to the father. The great non-dualist Shankaracharya, the Advaitavadi, whose famous composition Nirvana Shatakam, where he says, Pita naiva me naiva mata na janmaha, I have no father, no mother. Even such a great man who revelled in the non-dual consciousness, such a great Acharya, Sri Shankara, who was the most, the pride of Kerala, he was greatly devoted to his mother. So was Sri Ramakrishna, who was a mother worshipper, Swami Vivekananda, Saint Pattinathar of Tamil Nadu, and even the great Jnani Ramana Maharshi, to whom the whole world was an illusion. All the spiritual giants who realized that this world is an hallucination or illusion or Maya, even they could not renounce the women, the mother who conceived them. Of course, all of them renounced the lust. Lust belongs to the body and it applies to the gender. Lust has got no connection with man or woman. It is the attitudinal defect in the mind which is totally riveted to one of the lowest entity of our personality, the body, the physicality. So a profound place was allotted for women in India as they recognized the feminine part of the God of the universe in women. The whole attitude, the culture, ethics and morals and education revolved around women, so much so that it was even thought that to get a best quality human being, woman as mother is the most potential and essential thing needed. Accordingly, the whole of the Indian thought current revolved and rotated around this one attitude of worship for women, and the whole society was built upon that foundation. In one of the meetings in Western countries, they were discussing about what could be the standard for measuring the development of a country. Various answers were spelled out by different experts belonging to different fields, but one standard for development stood out and captured the attention of everybody participating in that meeting. And that was, it was told that when a young, beautiful girl, bedecked with ornaments all over her body, returning to her home at night and all alone and safely, is the standard of the highest development of a nation. People were really amazed to hear this standard of development, an indicator for the development of a nation. Someone asked, where is it being mentioned? And the answer was, it is being mentioned in Manu Dharma. So India held aloft the great position of women in their thought currents, not because of any emotional fickleness or any emotional response, but there are some perceptions which are based on truth. Thoughts based on the perception of truth are eternal and unchanging. Thoughts arising from the perception of solution as thought through the mind itself, they change according to the social needs of the change, but perception based on truth never undergoes the change. Therefore, this perception about the role of women and also the extraordinary place they hold in the creation was perceived directly as one of the truth of this creation, and therefore the total Indian mind got riveted to this idea. Of course, the present day situation may not make us believe that such a standard is in India, but even now in India, you will find there are wonderful ladies whom if you approach itself, you find the motherliness and purity radiating. If you squeeze the soil of India, you will find that great purity and chastity coming out as the very essence and the juice of Bharata Dharma. There are thousands and thousands of women in India who hold chastity, Pativrata Dharma or purity as the very backbone and the central pole of their life. So women and the response of the society to her was considered as an intrinsic measure of the development of a country. It is only when the material development of the country complemented with the psychological development, accompanied by moral and ethical and also spiritual development, which results in the perfect safety and freedom of a woman, can the country or individual said to be developed wholly and holistically. The rest is partial development or stunted growth and is malnourished ethically, morally and spiritually, even if it is materially developed and to some extent is successful in this world. The real development is when it spills over to the other areas of our personality, and the counterpart of man, the woman, is left untouched and allowed to grow in freedom and blossom fully to her potential. As you hear these sentiments, many of us, and to some extent we may even doubt if it is true, though to a good extent these positive trends are found in many of the homes of the typical Indians, we still doubt whether the present situation corroborates this view. But the present India, swayed by the effects of years of invasion and conquest and slavery, it may create a doubt in my mind or your mind or in the mind of the listeners. But that is only the what you call transitional external India. But the eternal India of Swami Vivekananda, the great and the grand India of Vivekananda, still lives in India, and you get a good glimpse of them in villages and many times in the most ultra-modern cities also. And I have experienced this. Even among the poor people, meeting a woman, you find your hands automatically getting folded in reverence. In fact, with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, Sharada Devi, and Vivekananda, and Swami Vivekananda's preaching about the great ideals of Indian womanhood in the West and in India, it has captured the minds of even modern young girls. It is surprising that in these trendy modern times, young qualified girls renounce their families and take to monastic life, joining Sharada Mutt or other nunneries. And also there are many women in the West and the East inspired by the life of Sri Sharada Devi, and they are leading a life of great purity and holiness. And yet at the same time they are very dynamic and active. And this is a sign that eternal India of Vivekananda is still simmering under the ashes of past effect, ready to erupt into its fullness. You have to go long distance here and there searching. Even our Lakshmi is one of such an example, unactive, following the path of Swami Vivekananda, but because they want to lead a pure spiritual life as set about by Sri Sharada Devi. Yet they all wanted to be financially free because women in India must be financially free to enjoy the totality of a personality blossoming up to its full potential. To keep themselves financially free, they all to the job of a teacher in the Sharda College, or they come to the Ramakrishna Mutt and they do lots and Ramakrishna Ananda. Yet, working in the Sharda College and some of one perfect woman is from where great men can speak.
Maharaj, voice is breaking.
No, you
Maharaj, voice is breaking. I think it is. Voice is not audible. Maharaj.
from where the whole of society emerges. So the society must be geared to change its outlook on women. There are tremendous possibilities arising out of this one particular attitude towards women. In fact, many of the problems of the society and the ailments can be solved once the attitude towards women can be changed. As the soil, so is the crop. However nice a seed may be, if the seed is sown on a barren soil or rocky soil, it doesn't bear fruit. I remember one funny incident that happened in Chennai, Mylapore, Ramakrishna Mutt. There was a spiritual retreat, and during the question and answer session, one of the lady, thinking herself to be very smart, put a very awkward question. But the question was very intelligently handled and tackled by the Swami. And that same Swami narrated this incident to me. During the question and answer session, one of the lady, very smilingly, she asked Swamiji, Maharaj, why is that nowadays we are not able to see monks like Shankaracharya and Vivekananda and others in the Ramakrishna Mutt? Others were really puzzled, and this lady was all smiles, thinking that she has cornered the speaker Swamiji. But Swamiji himself was ready with the answer, and he told, Amma, to get Vivekananda, where are those Aryamba and Bhuvaneshwari? And why is it that from your house not a single monk has joined, leave alone the question of getting a Shankaracharya or Vivekananda? Has any of your son become a monk? Then he told, to get a Vivekananda, we need a Bhuvaneshwari Devi. So the greatness, the profundity of this aspect in the quality perfection of a true Indian was recognized by great rishis and munis. That is why if you read the epic of Ramayana, Mahabharata and other places, and especially the Tirumandiram by Tirumular, this one act of reproduction was taken to such lofty heights of holiness that all carnality and basic feelings of the three-letter word totally disappeared from Indian mind for the time being. And in fact, it is from that level of worship that the activity itself was done by Indians. No shade of any physicality or any vulgarity was attached. It was a total holy act of Shiva and Shakti combining. In fact, when Ramakrishna, who saw divinity in everything, both the profound and the profane. He once remarked, I saw two people mating and I never felt anything vulgar. I felt Shiva and Shakti are mingling and rejoicing and playing their divine Leela of creation. This is something very, very superb, which the modern world has pulled down to its lowest and vulgarest level, thinking that this is something to be totally hated. It's source of fear, taboo, and all sorts of ailments are picking up in our society. So the response to women, how do we respond to women? It must be taught to our children in their homes first by their parents. In fact, Swami Vivekananda's response to women, both in India as well as in other countries, it's a classic example of how an Indian child must be brought up and how he was brought up by Bhuvaneshwari Devi. Once Bhuvaneshwari Devi had remarked to Narendranath, Swami Vivekananda during his younger days, that do not do anything or do not respond to women in such a way that I, your mother, will feel ashamed of your behavior. And once when Swami Vivekananda became very famous in United States and in other countries, many of the Christian fathers and others belonging to the opposite groups and were jealous of Swamiji, they started the character scandal. They started character assassination of Swamiji, and one day Swamiji was lying on the ground in his room and weeping, where suddenly Sri Ramakrishna comes and says, hey, my hero, get up. You are an incomparable person. People are mere worms. Do not listen to these people's worms squabbling or simply going on shouting, get up, my hero, and wander thou like a rhinoceros in this world. And Swamiji was really invigorated. He was a man of fiery purity. When he was questioned, why did he bother so much? He replied, it was not for me. This is something very touchy and so refined and so tender. He told what my mother would feel when she will hear that her son is behaving like this, or that if these stories which are going as rumors, if she believes it as true, how she will writhe in pain. So see the beautiful relation between a mother and a son, and how the mother had trained this boy, Narendranath, how to respond to the women folks of this creation. This is something that has touched my mind also. And it's a great allied behavior that we have to learn from Swami Vivekananda. This is a lesson Indians must learn from Vivekananda. There are so many other incidents which happened in our Indian Defence Force, but which are not so tasty to be narrated here. But most of these stories bargain the safety and the protection and the military secrets of our country we find most of the time because our officials do not behave properly, do not respond positively and creatively towards women, and they fall it. And therefore there is woman not being responded to properly by these people. How Vivekananda responded even to women who played the role of a temptress. That is something worthy to see, and especially in the modern times, how do our youngsters respond to women? Especially during an young age, when the whole of the desires are on fire, erupting like a volcanic lava, how a young boy or a young girl should respond to each other is a great Indian culture that must be imparted to these youngsters so that they pick up on Swami Vivekananda's styles and build their personality shaped by this great hero. Today we shall look into some of the incidents that occurred in the life of Swami Vivekananda and how he responded, which will give to us a glimpse about the signature Indian response towards women. During his childhood days, he had many dolls to play. There is an interesting incident about Swami Vivekananda's childhood plays with dolls. One of his favorite dolls was Rama. But one day when he learned that Rama was married, he threw away the doll and started weeping. He was consoled only when he got the doll of Shiva, who was told to be the king of ascetics and king of monks. But of course, Shiva also had Parvati as its consort, in the sense that Parvati is half of Shiva, his energy, and is inseparable. Here in this, we get a deeper view of the Indian outlook and philosophy about woman. Woman must be treated on par with men. And when the balance tilts, as it is happening in the present day society, both in India and in other countries, all sorts of chaos and problems and all sorts of tricks sets in. Every man who thinks he is superior to a woman fails to understand that he himself is a creation through woman, and so naturally, woman is to be adored and treated honorably. There are hundreds of philosophical thought currents arising out of this one point, but we are not going to digress into those points today because we are essentially focusing on Swami Vivekananda's classic behavior and his response towards women. As in our work field, where we equip ourselves differently for different works. For example, the firefighters wear different dress and equipments. Pilots, they wear different dress and they use different equipments. Sea divers, they have different varieties of equipments and dress is different. Military people wear different clothes and their equipments suit the need of the work. So too, nature has equipped men with a body and women with another type of body. But then, when body itself becomes the whole of life, then we become base people, tied to carnality, and we get imprisoned in the flesh itself. But this body is not permanent. It undergoes tremendous changes and transformations. And just beneath the surface of the skin, our own body is so abominable that we refuse to keep a dead body, however beautiful it may look, quickly dispose it. A saint in Tamil Nadu by the name Manika Vachakar says, just because that crows and other creatures should not peck and eat us, the nature has provided a protective skin. But the man's vision, when it gets tied to the lowest level of our personality, naturally the output in the form of our conduct and behavior will be gross, aside the aesthetic, moral, and ethical levels of our personality unattended. We can go down to the level of our life which can yield more beneficial and better rewards. We will be tied to the very physicality of our nature, and we will refuse to raise to the aesthetic, cultural, ethical, moral, and spiritual aspects of our personality which have higher yields in our life. Thus, for Swami Vivekananda, Shiva became the idol and as a symbol of Shiva Shakti unification, where both male and female aspects of creation are equally valid. And essential, and none is later years when he will be inspiring the people of India for freedom. He will be glorifying the Sita as an idol of enlightenment. He imbibed all of these noble traits from his own mother, Bhuvaneshwari Devi, claimed to be his first school and was never tired of praising his mother, had imbibed. Later, when he met Sri Ramakrishna, picked up the ray of Indian perception about women and the way she is to be treated, theme of life. Early, we will look into some of the Indian culture and tradition. If time is available, we may also take up one or two incidents where we will find how other great Indian personality responded in the typical Bharatiya way. So this has to be taught to the Indian younghood. Why it is necessary that we should know how to respond to women. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, there is a process mentioned for attaining the highest truth, which is suitable for success in every field of life. We find it happening in the lives of most of the success people to a great extent. These three are called tapaswadhyaya and pranidhana, earnest longing or surrendering to the goal, totally getting immersed into the goal. To get immersed and not to lose sight of our goal and to constantly endeavor to attain that, great energy is needed. Energy is to be garnered and harnessed. If the available energy is frittered away for satisfying the physical desires alone, then it is difficult, like the plane, which, if it exhausts most of its fuel in the runway, cannot take off. Or takes off, it will have a crash landing very soon. Similarly, we have a crash landing in our life. This idea as the art of conserving and preserving the energy and then lifting it to higher and sublime levels and for purposes which we want to achieve. And this art was taught in the childhood itself to both boys and girls, and it was called as the great art of brahmacharya. One is a principle involved in this to achieve success in this effort of preserving the energies. One of the principles involved in this to achieve the success in the effort of our preserving the energy is to look upon woman as mother or sister and man as father or brother. This is a practical and productive principle for many of the ailments of the society and also the problems faced by women of the world. There is not a single woman who will feel dishonored when a pure man comes near her with the attitude of a son or a brother. Every woman can recognize this purity and chastity by her own nature and by her own intrinsic mother hidden inside every woman. No woman can be cheated in this way, Vivekananda says. Knowing this, Vivekananda, as Narendranath, during his school days also wanted to master this art of energy harnessing called brahmacharya. This energy helps one in achieving the resolutions of our lives in a very short period. His guru Sri Ramakrishna even looked upon prostitutes also as an expression of Divine Mother, and with the venerable attitude of expressing maternal love, he would approach them. Now we will take up 2-3 incidents from the life of Swamiji, as I have been telling again and again. As is usual among the students now, in those days also, most of the students had the habit of the rush hour tendency. That is, trying to focus their whole mind during the last few days before the examination starts. So during those days, Swami Vivekananda, leaving his father's house, will retire to his grandmother's house in the village, which was very, very calm and quiet and peaceful, and so would day and night pour on the books, and within few days will master every subject. So once he had gone before the examination to his grandmother's house to take up the study of some of the subjects which he had not been attending for a few months. So as he was studying, in between, to take a break and relax, Swami Vivekananda used to sing songs. And it was found that near the house of his grandmother, there was a widow who was listening, and she had noted Swami Vivekananda as Narendranath, who was very young, well-built, handsome, and extremely intelligent, with beautiful, captivating eyes, he has come to read for his examination, and once in a while he starts singing beautiful song. He had a melodious voice, and hearing his voice, even Sri Ramakrishna used to go into samadhi. So Swami Vivekananda, for relaxation, in between the study hours, used to sing beautiful songs. This young widow, listening to some of the songs, got so fascinated to Swami Vivekananda's voice that soon she lost her balance and she became fascinated with Swami Vivekananda himself. And slowly she started keeping the windows of her house open and started listening to Swami Vivekananda's songs, became a great admirer of Swami Vivekananda's voice, and slowly fell for the beauty of Swami Vivekananda. And one day during night, becoming bold, she entered the house or the room where Swami Vivekananda was standing and proposed to her, telling that she wanted to marry Swami Vivekananda. What a dangerous situation a young man is exposed to. And when somebody else voluntarily gives this advantage and a positive situation for you, the tendency in the modern mind, I find, is they constantly, except few, they fall a victim to these temptations. And this is a great lesson from the life of Swami Vivekananda, how one can hold on to one's great personality strength and express his tremendous grit and willpower in facing these situations of life. Seeing that girl, the young widow, coming to his room very boldly without any announcement, Swami Vivekananda stood nonchalantly and without winking his eyes, simply looked into the eyes of that woman, folded his hands, fell at his feet, and he told, "Mother, is it worthy for an Indian woman to come to a young man's room at this time? Will not people misinterpret it? It is better that you quit my room immediately." Hearing this very strong, resolute voice and intention of Swami Vivekananda, the lady could not but leave the room, and Swami Vivekananda immediately started changing his room and going to other rooms, started continuing his studies. So here is a typical crisis situation, and had not Swamiji been given the foundation of how to respond to a woman, perhaps he could have lost balance. But that is not the story of how the great people build their life brick by brick. The great edifice, the monument of Vivekananda's personality, has been consciously, voluntarily, and with full knowledge he has built it, because from the very childhood itself he had been a great admirer and follower of ascetic Shiva, who burnt Manmata with his third eye. In fact, Swami Vivekananda himself is being considered as an aspect of Shiva, the great Mahadeva, who was supposed to be the very embodiment of purity. Especially as Indian boys and girls, when they visit the Western countries for higher studies, this classic behavior of a typical Indian must be imbibed by all these people, not only for the glory, not only for the honor, and also the esteem of the nation, for protecting their own intrinsic purity and chastity, and for their own inner personality, the very foundation of the edifice of their own personality. How not to lose ourselves, how not to lose our honor and self-respect on the face of such tempting situations, so that our willpower becomes so strong and stable that nothing in the world can shake it, is a great lesson that we learn from the life of Swami Vivekananda. It is not only that once he has been tempted with such a thing, it has happened again and again. Of course, the incident which I had narrated now, it was when his father was alive. And in those days, Swami Vivekananda, his house you can see in Calcutta, nearly 10 to 12 families or 20 families can stay in that house. It's such a huge house. He was the son of a very rich man and an attorney general. His father was a very rich man. They had a coach, and there were 2 maid servants to take care of Vivekananda during his childhood. So he was a very rich man. But after the death of the father, the scorching poverty that grinded Vivekananda and his family was so cruel that many of his friends even suggested evil and dubious ways of earning money. But Vivekananda, who was rooted in the traditional way of Indian life, could not accept this way of earning money, and therefore he had always had to struggle with some of his friends. Once he was taken to Girish Chandra Ghosh, the great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, who was a great dramatist. He had asked Swami Vivekananda to sing few songs for his drama. Swami and told that he will help him with payment of some money for the songs. Swami Vivekananda, who was then Narendranath, took part in the drama called Vilva Mangala. And Vilva Mangala story also is a very heart-touching and a very thrilling story of how to look upon a woman. There's something very, very thrilling, though it is not our today's subject. Later, Vilva Mangala corrected his viewpoint. And during that rehearsal practice of Vilva Mangala, Swami Vivekananda had gone to the theatre of Girish Chandra Ghosh and putting on the reeds of Tampura. Just starting the Tampura tune, Swami Vivekananda in his own sonorous and manly voice started singing, and the whole atmosphere in the theatre underwent a dramatic change. Some of those actresses who are doing makeup for taking different roles in the drama were so struck with awe and reverence that all of them stood with folded hands listening to this marvelous voice. Understanding that fear and the reverence of these ladies, within 2 or 3 songs, Girish Chandra Ghosh came, paid Swami Vivekananda the amount for singing those songs, and asked him to leave the theatre. This is something tremendous. This is what we call as the personality radiating, a radioactive personality of purity. Just by listening to the voice, listening to the sound of a man, the very character oozes out from the voice and from the melodious tone and the feelings that were emanating from the song. So what a terrific impact it had on those actresses, and most of those actresses were like prostitutes. Next day, some of these actresses went to Girish and they told the young boy who came and sang some songs so melodiously yesterday seems to be like a monk leading a spiritual life. We are already committing lots of sins by leading such a ruinous life. Why do you want to make us more punishable by developing a wrong and ill attitude towards that beautiful, handsome, lovely, sonorous voiced Narendranath? So this was the effect of Swami Vivekananda's adherence to purity, that by his mere presence he could make those actresses feel the radiance of the purity of his personality. In later days, when the poverty increased and he found that it was not possible even to get a full square meal, some of his friends, having come to understand this, and they were earning their money through evil ways and dubious means, wanted to help Vivekananda in that way. However, Vivekananda was unwilling and rejected all their proposals to earn money in that dubious and evil ways. But once they invited Vivekananda to their friend's house, and there was great merriment and singing. As all those friends were engaged in merriment and singing, they had arranged for a beautiful young girl, a widow, to come to Swamiji's room. After the singing and discussion and merriment was over, Swami Vivekananda retired to one of the rooms of the friends, and as per the arrangement, Swami Vivekananda's room, and slowly started talking about the personal problems and the great tragedy that has struck her and the misery this topic, like Vivekananda's response to women in Malaysia. So the young boys and girls were really stunned to see how Vivekananda, as a schoolboy or college boy, responded to women. It is something very noble and very courageous. There is some amount or almost a great element of manliness in this approach. Swami Vivekananda used to say there is a great manliness, not in proposing to woman, but in honoring woman as your mother or sister. This is something very great, you see. Proposing to a woman or trying to win her attraction or admiration, it's a quite cheap. It's all like pebbles in front of diamonds. But Swamiji's behavioral profundity touches our minds. And one of the speakers touched this point. The modern young boys and girls must learn this from Vivekananda, especially Indian boys and girls. And once in Pune, in one of the engineering college, I was talking about Swami Vivekananda. And lastly, I came upon this point of Swamiji's secret of success. And I told that Swami Vivekananda himself says that the secret of his success is the art of conserving the human energy and lifting it to higher levels and then using it for transformation of our life purpose and achieving it. This is called the art of brahmacharya. Moment I used the word brahmacharya, all the professors and the lecturers and the elders in the hall simply left the hall and went out. I was surprised. Only one professor was standing. And I asked, why you are standing there? He told, Swamiji, you are going to finish your talk. I have to give you thanks. So I'm standing here. And as soon as he pronounced his thanks, a very young, ultra-modern dressed girl came running to me. Before I could convey my speech or come out of the hall expressing my great feelings for the meeting, she came and told, what is that, something, that word you used, that how to conserve and preserve the energy. Then I told that was the word called brahmacharya. Can we achieve it? How to achieve it? Seeing that young girl, well dressed in a modern way, coming and asking me, many of the boys also gathered near, and they got interested in this discussion of how to conserve and preserve this energy, the great ancient lore of brahmacharya, which was taught in our Gurukula. And I told, this is how our Indian people, as you see in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, exhibiting superhuman feats, how they could do it was because of this great achievement in life, like Hanuman. How Hanuman could do, Hanuman was a great brahmacharya. Vivekananda was a brahmacharya. Samartha Ramadas was a brahmacharya. Personalities of India, both spiritual and science, most of them were having this great art of this secret spiritual tradition of India. So some of the boys gathered and they were all interested. Then I told the professors, you see, this is something they are all interested, but you have made such and as if this matter is a matter of great shame or you are feeling so shy to discuss about it. But in ancient times, in the Gurukula, young children were taught about it. This is very essential for building or laying the foundation for the great edifice called superhuman personality. And then slowly the professors came near and they all felt relaxed. I told there is nothing to be frightened or embarrassed. This is something very, very vital for our growth. And once this is set right, the same eternal India which Swami Vivekananda dreamed of will come back again. Once during a stay in Madras, Swami Vivekananda says, seeing me, young men of Madras are emboldened and they have full faith now that bodily desires can be won and man can become a superman. This is something tremendous, and that is why the life incidents of Swami Vivekananda becomes more and more essential for us. So this is what we learned from Swami Vivekananda's life when he was rich, and then when he was poor, when cruelty, in a cruel way, the poverty was crushing him. And then how Vivekananda responded to that widow. Again, Vivekananda sent a word to some of his friends, through some of his friends, that if Vivekananda can marry, she can put a full stop to all the miseries and anguish of her life, and her whole life, body, wealth, everything will. And never in his life Vivekananda very gently folded hands and refused to accept the offer, raising to his own magnificent personality. This is in India. Afterwards, when he had gone to Khetri, Rajasthan, and he was staying in the Raja's palace. The king, Raja Ajit Singh Bahadur, about whom I have referred in the last meeting, he had appointed some of the slave girls